my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have founder and executive director of Gun Owners of Arkansas, Gary Epperson, joining us, as well as Republican primary candidate Jody Harris. She is running for House District 25. Thank y'all for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Gary, let me start with you. First, tell us about your organization and why you felt there was a need to start it in the first place.
Well, we're a grassroots organization, and through our footprint, we rely a lot on the citizens across the state, getting them involved. The major factor where we formed was during the early years of 746 and the municipalities and the executive branch failure to recognize permitless carry in Arkansas. And we did walks throughout the state. I can't tell you the countless phone calls from people that are people, the district prosecutors, police chiefs, sheriffs across the state. It was a massive effort, and a lot of people were involved in getting that recognized to the point where we're at today.
So your organization routinely will endorse candidates during election season. Most recently, Gun Owners of Arkansas endorsed Jody for House Seat 25. Tell us why you all did that.
Well, we kind of have a unique process on the vetting of candidates. I guess a lot of organizations go at them from my perspective, like I did with Jody, one-on-one talking with her. But we also have other factors or methods that we use from everyday citizens that will go up and talk to these other candidates. And some of them may pose as anti-gun to try to get a truthful response from these other candidates. Or if are they a politician, or are they going to stay true to their convictions? So any particular candidate, we may have 3 to 5 people that they're talking to a DOAR member and don't have a clue that they are. So that we try to get a true assessment of a candidate, and Jody fared very well in that assessment.
Right.
She's real, and that's what we look for, real people that's going to represent the people instead of the government.
Jody, tell us about that endorsement.
Well, it was really important to me to have a group behind me that really does understand the value of the Constitution and what our constitutional rights are. And when it comes to gun laws, we have certain inalienable rights that are, our right to carry a gun, to protect our family, to hunt, however we choose to use it. And those rights should not be infringed upon.
Let's talk about that for a second. I think there's several different schools of thought regarding the Second Amendment or gun rights. Some people will say, oh, well, that law is given to you by the government. And others will say, no, this is a God-given right that we have. It cannot be infringed upon. Talk to us about where you stand.
So from my perspective, I'm a parent. I want to be able to protect my family, and I don't want the government, whether the state or the federal government, telling me what I can and cannot do to protect my family. And when it comes to my children, there's nothing that would stop me from protecting them and standing up for those rights. That's something that I will do to continue to protect my own family and for everyone else in Arkansas.
Let's talk about some legislation just briefly and 2A issues here in Arkansas. Gary, you mentioned Act 746 earlier. That was back in, I think, 2013.
Yes.
Talk to us about that piece of legislation and the bill. What was the original intent of that bill, and where are we now today with it?
Well, the original intent of the bill, I'm not sure the legislatures really even knew what the actual intent was. Some did, some didn't, some still don't. But regardless what the intent was, the wording created permitless carry in Arkansas. And at approximately 6 years later, we now have case law with Act 746 established by Petrie versus Arkansas and Taft versus Arkansas. In fact, it is the only firearms law on the book that has case law established. None of the other firearms laws do, to include the concealed handgun statute. So if you're unlawfully arrested, even if you have a concealed handgun license, you don't have any recourse to go back to against that department until case law is established. So it's a non-factor anymore, even though the executive branch has failed or sidestepped the issue. It's pretty well established where permitless carry state. And then after this session, with the journey rule changes and the vehicle is considered an extension of your home, that's a secondary means of being a permitless carry state. A lot of people get those confused. We don't need journey. Well, journey protects you in the federal gun-free zones also. And it's a secondary means of permitless carry. So if they want to target one, they're going to have to target the other. They're going to have to eliminate both statutes to do away with it.
Right. So we're looking at Act 746, further legislation that's been passed. Some would say, and there have been plenty of articles written about this. It seems as though sometimes our Arkansas legislature just continues to trip over itself, creating new legislation, when really what needs to happen is, let's not continue to pass bills for the sake of passing bills, but let's go back and fix the bad ones.
Right.
What do you think about that, Jody?
Well, when you watch any issue in the legislature, we have bill after bill after bill passed, and what we need is fewer good bills that protect our citizens. And one thing that happens with gun rights is they pass a bad bill and then they come back in and try to fix it with more legislation. And we don't need more legislation in Arkansas. We need less of their interference in our personal rights and liberties.
Let's talk about the Stand Your Ground bill. Gary, what are your thoughts on that bill?
Well, it was pretty controversial. We opposed the bill. We took a lot of flack over the bill, mainly over the wording of lawfully present. And it did pass. We lost it. That's behind us. We'll accept that. But it created a situation where it really targeted concealed handgun licensed people more so than it did the non-permitted people. So will it be revisited? Probably not by us in the near future. We'll just have to wait and see till, if the legislatures at some point want to pick that up.
Recently, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is proposing, she said that she's going to propose eliminating fees and the federal fees that gun owners incur when they are applying for their permit. What is your first thought on that?
My first thought is that is a step in the right direction. There is no reason why anyone, because of their God-given right to carry any kind of firearm, needs to have a permit. And so eliminating those obstacles and expenses that are associated with that create more fairness in the passion for firearms and for the idea that anyone can protect themselves or their family or their business, whatever it may be. Removing those obstacles makes it a fair process for everyone.
Let's talk about recently Senate Bill 59, Act 872. Jody, that was, it's called the Interstate Firearms Protection Act. Do you think that is a step in the right direction? Do you think that pushes back against these, federal edicts that could possibly happen? What are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, anytime that we can keep the federal government out of our business inside of our state, that is a good thing. We as a state have states' rights where we can protect ourselves, make our own laws to connect with our citizens.
Gary, talk to us about any obstacles that you see regarding the issue of 2A here in Arkansas.
Of course, gun-free zones is one that's always on our list. And sometimes you have to get the conversation started. And that conversation may last for 1 or 2 sessions before you have the political climate to pass it. We've started that conversation. Whether it will be a priority next session, I do not know, but we're always looking for an advantage to jump in and advance to issues. We have legislation that we're already working on that we propose to legislatures for the next session. At some point, we'll release those out to the public. Right now, we're waiting to see how the primaries and who we're going to have to deal with and all that. So But we try to stay ahead on the legislation as much as possible in advance, because most bills we found are settled before you ever go to Little Rock or before they're even heard. So we're trying to stay away in advance of that, building support.
That's wise. Jody, if you are elected, what would you hope to accomplish in Little Rock?
I think one of the things I would hope to accomplish as far as gun ownership and gun protections for citizens is just to not necessarily remove background checks and things that are important, but I think it's really important to remove some of the obstacles for gun owners to carry their firearm. There is a program right now. There are some small schools in Arkansas where they can't afford a school resource officer. And so we have programs in place to make it lawful for teachers who are trained to carry a firearm to protect those students. Who wouldn't be for that? As a parent, I'm for that. I want to protect children. I want to be able to protect my business. And, I want to be able to hunt and do what I want. And so the more of the government that we can take out of this situation, the better. So I think it's more important to focus on good legislation, fewer bills that make more sense for gun owners.
Well, what Jody touched on through my background back over the years, it's good to have school resource officers in the schools. It's not the solution. You take somebody that is trained, that resource officer is just a bump in the road. Now, if I was going to target the school, the one thing that would really bother me is when I went into that school, if I had ill intent, just who the devil is armed and who isn't.
Exactly.
That is a problem for a shooter or me or anybody that's trained. And to me, that's far more effective than resource officers.
How would you want to change the conversation, shift the conversation about gun ownership right now in our culture?
One of our goals is to, at some point, establish a 501c3 and an education program, and to get back involved in schools through 4-H shooting sports or things of that nature, and get kids back involved in shooting sports, whether it be clays or whatever, even pistol shooting. So that's something we're looking at in the future when it becomes viable.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you guys would want to add? I know that the primary election day is coming up soon. It's happening in May. What should voters know about you?
I think that one thing that voters should know is that I will protect our Second Amendment. I will protect our God-given rights, and they are. That is exactly where those rights come from. They don't come from the state of Arkansas. They don't come from the federal government. They're something that we were given, and we have every right to protect our families and to protect our citizens. And when it comes to gun legislation, I will vote for the good bills that protect our interests in this. And, in thinking about, the legacy that I want to leave with gun ownership to my children, I don't want to see them have to continue to jump through these hoops. And like Gary was saying, we really have a corner to turn with education about gun owners are not the bad guys. We're the good guys. We're the ones who want to protect people and want to make this a simpler process.
And that's why we endorsed her.
Well, listen.
Amen.
Yeah, I really appreciate both of y'all coming in today to Conduit. Gary, hope that we can talk again soon. Jody, keep us updated on your campaign.
All right, thank you.